My first year of selling this product on Amazon, I did $365,000 in sales. Now, it's important to remember that revenue is not profit. And I'm gonna break down all my numbers, show you the revenue, all my expenses, and the final profit for the first 3 years of running my business, Performance Nut Butter, which I just sold. Then I'm gonna tell you why I sold my business, how I found someone to buy my business, and spoiler alert, I actually only ended up selling 75% of my business. So I still retained 25% ownership in the company. And at the end of this video, I'm gonna share with you the exact deal I got, how much money I got for Performance Nut Butter. And again, I think it's $1 million deal, but it's a little bit more complicated of a deal. I did not get $1 million in cash, but I think the value of this deal, as you will see, is well over $1 million. But first, I'm gonna share with you year by year my revenue, cost, and profit. And as I mentioned, in the first year of selling this product on Amazon, I did $365,000 in sales. But there was a lot of costs associated with doing business. And the first cost I had was the cost to manufacture the products that I sold. And in my first year on Amazon, I sold over 13,000 units of Performance Nut Butter. Now, it cost a lot of money to make all those units. Then the next cost of running my Amazon FBA business was the Amazon selling fee. And that was around $55,000. Now, this is the fee every time you sell a product on Amazon. No matter what, it's a flat 15% fee, and Amazon gets to keep that money for listing your product on their website. I also paid around $50,000 in FBA fulfillment fees. This is the fee for you to store your products in the Amazon warehouse, and when you get an order off of the Amazon.com website, Amazon picks, packs, and ships out your product for you. And this is what makes Amazon FBA such an amazing passive income business opportunity, is that you don't have to deal with fulfillment. And basically, Amazon does all the really tough parts, because when you get an order, they pick, pack, and ship it, which means that you can travel all around the world and your business can keep running without you. But there are other fees associated with selling on Amazon, things such as storage fees, receiving fees, and lots of little random fees that they don't really talk a lot about. I spent around $2,000 in these other random fees. Another thing that not a lot of people talk about is PPC. And PPC is a way for you to advertise on Amazon. It's pay-per-click advertising. And it's one of the best ways to market your product, because for every dollar you spend in advertising, you might get $3, $4, $5 in sales. And I spent around $12,000 on Amazon PPC. And of course, despite all these different fees, there was other costs associated with running my business. Things like buying an LLC, insurance for my company, just lots of little random things. And I estimate my other fees to be somewhere in the ballpark of around $11,000. And when you add up all these costs, my total profit from my first year of selling this product on Amazon was $120,000, which was amazing. About 8 years ago, when I had a corporate job, I dreamed about this idea of creating a business that could make me $300 a day passive income. And within the first year of launching my business on Amazon FBA, I was able to hit that number. That's the power of Amazon. I've been a full-time e-commerce entrepreneur for over 8 years, and I've tried a lot of different ways to make money online. And I have to say, launching a passion product on Amazon was the easiest way I've ever found to do it. But let's talk about my second year, because something crazy happened in my second year. My sales actually went up. And I should mention, after I launched during my first year, I started to really enjoy life. I started to travel. I started to do all the things that I've always wanted to do. And to be honest, I really kind of stopped working on my Amazon business because, as I mentioned, my goal was to be making $300 a day passive income. Passive meaning I didn't need to spend a ton of time working on it. But despite that, in my second year, I sold about 16,000 units for over $400,000 in revenue. And after you subtract all my costs, in my second year, I did around $150,000 profit. And during this time, I was really living my dream life. I was, as I mentioned, traveling, but I had also started focusing more on this YouTube channel because, as I mentioned, I've been a full-time e-commerce entrepreneur for over 8 years, and I felt like I found something that really worked, and I wanted to share that knowledge. So during my second year, I launched a course. I started putting a lot more energy and attention into this YouTube channel, and it paid off. I was able to grow my YouTube channel. I was able to start making a lot of money from the YouTube channel. I was able to start helping a lot of students launch amazing products. But the truth is, the sales for my Amazon FBA business in my third year have been dropping. And in my third year, I did close to 8,000 units in sales, which was about half what I did the year before, for a total revenue of a little over $200,000 and a total profit for around $60,000. Now, in my third year, I also did launch a new product, which was a cacao performance nut butter, which didn't do that well. I talk about it in depth in this video right here. It still did good. It still made me an extra $1,000 profit per month, but it wasn't amazing. But it makes sense. I stopped really paying attention to my business, and I was focusing almost 100% of my energy on the YouTube channel and on students in my course. So it's only natural that sales would decline, but still, despite paying almost no attention to my Amazon FBA business. In my third year, I still made over $60,000 in profit, which was pretty close to what I made in my corporate job without having to do any work. Now I'm gonna break down exactly how the deal worked for me selling my business, as well as how I found someone to sell my business, but I wanna talk a little bit more about why I sold my business. As I mentioned, I started to lose some of the passion for my business, even though on this channel, that's what I talk about, is creating a product that you're passionate about. What I found is by having that extra source of income from my Amazon FBA business, it allowed me to start doing things that I really loved. And one of the things that I personally love doing is making these YouTube videos and helping other people launch businesses. But I didn't want to just let my business die. So I called my friend Joe, who is an expert at selling businesses. And he went on to say that,
Travis, you have options.
That 1, I could hire someone to run my business. 2, I could just sell my business out completely and walk away from it, get the money, and never have to worry about it again. Or 3, I could partner with someone. So I decided to try hiring someone. And the reason I did this was because I wanted to keep Performance Nut Butter growing. I know that it has a ton of potential. It's a really amazing business. And the other reason I decided to hire someone was I just talk a lot on this YouTube channel about my Amazon FBA business. And I didn't want to completely just sell my business, because if I completely sold my business and I wasn't involved anymore, people might not trust me. They might not trust my content. They might consider me a fake guru. So about 10 months ago, I posted a video on this channel trying to recruit an intern for Performance Nut Butter. And ultimately, it didn't work out. I wasn't able to find anybody that really worked well with me for a number of different reasons that I talk about in this video. But really what I learned was I didn't want to have to teach someone from scratch how to run my business. I wanted someone that was maybe a little bit more experienced. So I tried hiring an expert, and that didn't work out. I found because they didn't have enough stake in the business. They didn't have a real reason to grow the business. They didn't care as much as I cared. So I moved on to option number 3, which was partnering with someone. And I asked all my friends, all my mentors in the Amazon FBA space, if they would want to partner on Performance Nut Butter. And not surprisingly, all of them told me that they were too busy running their own businesses. But because of this, one of my friends, Mina, who's been on this channel before, he ended up talking to someone he knew that had previously sold an Amazon FBA business for over $10 million. And that person ended up expressing interest in Performance Nut Butter. So we started talking, and I was really impressed by this guy. He asked for me not to share his name just yet, though maybe in future videos I will. But for now, we'll codename him Bob. So Bob and I talked. In fact, he ended up flying out to Santa Monica, first class by the way, and stayed at a hotel right on the beach right here. And we met up in person. And first off, I had to say, I was very impressed, not only that he flew all the way out here first class and was staying on the beach, but also by the fact that he was a really cool guy and he had previously sold a business for a lot of money. I knew this is someone that I wanted to partner with. Now I am gonna go into details on how the sale worked with Bob in just a minute, but one important thing to note is, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, a big part of this deal for me was he was gonna allow me to keep 25% of Performance Nut Butter, which is really important to me because I still wanted to be involved. I still wanted to give some love to Performance Nut Butter. And I still wanted to be able to make great content and learn amazing things for this YouTube channel so I can share it with you. And when we met up in person, I came with a list of questions of different random things that Joe had actually told me that I should ask. And I'll share what those questions are in a future video. So if you're interested for that, make sure to subscribe because I'm gonna be doing an in-depth video on how to sell an Amazon FBA business. But we talked over everything and we basically came to an agreement and we basically made a handshake deal right then. Now, the important thing to note is a handshake deal doesn't really mean anything. He ended up sending me over a contract and he hired a lawyer to write the contract. I ended up hiring a different lawyer to review the contract. Now, before I get into detail about what the lawyer had to say about the contract, there were some important things that Bob and I agreed upon in making this deal. The first was, as I mentioned, I get 25% of the company still. I still get to retain 25%. The second thing is he agreed to launch 2 new products within a year of us actually signing the deal and making everything official. And the third thing, and this is probably the most important part of the deal for me personally, was he told me that I could share anything and everything about Performance Nut Butter. Because as you know, if you watch this channel, that's a big part of my YouTube channel is sharing all my numbers, all my products, like all the behind the scenes things. And he was totally okay with that. Now my lawyer didn't really understand this aspect of it. I think he did on a surface level, but I don't think he really understood how important my YouTube channel was and how valuable this deal really is. Because the truth is, I can make a lot of money from a YouTube video when I talk about launching a new product and I release it. For instance, when I launched the Performance Nut Butter Cacao, I did a YouTube video talking about my honest results from the first 2 weeks of selling the product. I'll link it up here. That video went viral. It's making $100 a day in ad revenue. So there were some parts of the deal that I don't think my lawyer fully understood, but overall, in looking through the contract, he didn't really find a ton of things that stood out that needed to be changed, which is a good thing. That means that Bob gave me a good deal and he wasn't trying to screw me over in the contract. One thing I haven't mentioned yet in this video is Bob's goal with Performance Nut Butter is to grow it and sell it for at least $1 to $2 million, which is also my goal. Now, he sold, as I mentioned, a previous business for over $10 million, so there's always a chance that he sells it for a lot more than $1 to $2 million, but $1 to $2 million is the minimum range we're looking at. And this was another really big reason I decided to do the deal with Bob, is that I knew that he had the potential to grow this business and sell it for a lot more than I could on my own. Now, I have to be honest, dealing with lawyers sucks. Even though my lawyer was very nice and his lawyer was very nice, it's just I hate the back and forth. I hate the having to specify everything. I'm much more of a handshake deal kind of person. It took about 3 weeks to go back and forth between the lawyers and really get the contract done. From the time that Bob came out to visit me in Santa Monica and we basically had a handshake deal to actually completing and signing the final paperwork was about 3 weeks. Now, one really important thing to note is I wasn't sleeping a lot during this time. In fact, right in the middle of our negotiating back and forth and dealing with the lawyers, my account got suspended on Amazon, and I did a video, a link up here and down below, where I talk about that. And I released that video last week. It was a really nerve-wracking time because here I am trying to sell my business, and at the same time, Amazon is messing with my account, which obviously would make Bob less likely to want to buy my business. And luckily for me, Bob knows how Amazon works. He knows that things like that happen. And ultimately, the account suspension issue got resolved. Again, I talk about it in depth in this video. Now let me break down how the deal worked and how much I actually sold my Amazon FBA business for. So it's important to note that generally, businesses sell for 2 to 3x profit, yearly profit. And last year, my business did around $61,000. Now, normally I'd probably get closer to the 3x, maybe even the 4x range, because I have a product that's consumable and I have a lot of people that are in subscriptions, which means there's a lot of repeat purchases. And on top of that, I have a really strong brand. I might be able to get closer to that 3 to 4x range, but because my sales actually declined from year 2 to year 3, I'm gonna assume it's closer to that 2x range. It's a bigger risk buying a business like mine because sales are actively dropping. If they were increasing over time, I probably could get closer to that 4x range. Another aspect in valuing a business is how much inventory does a business have? And in total, when you calculate all my inventory, which includes over 3,000 boxes of original Performance Nut Butter, around 3,000 boxes of Cacao Performance Nut Butter, and we can add to that list about 3,800 jars, which is the next Amazon FBA product I'm gonna be coming out with very soon. So again, make sure to subscribe because I'm gonna be coming out much more details about that. On top of that, you have to include all the boxes, all the film, the sachet film for the pouches, all the different master cases, and a bunch of other random supplies. Once you include all that, I have about $90,000 of inventory. There's also assets that aren't included under inventory. Things like my trademark, my design, the website, the Amazon account itself has value. In fact, I could probably sell my Amazon account even if I didn't actually sell the business behind it for a few $1,000s, because Amazon accounts that have been open for a few years and that are ungated have some value. And on top of everything else I've already talked about, my business bank account has around $170,000 in it. So total, when you add all this up, Performance Nut Butter at the time that I sold it was probably worth around $400,000. So let's talk about how much he paid me for 75% stake in Performance Nut Butter. Now, before I go into details about that, it's important to understand when you're selling a business, or even more importantly, creating a partnership, there's a lot more that goes into the deal than just how much money is exchanged from one person to another. A really important factor for me personally, I love learning new things. I'm all about education. In fact, I would pay a lot of money to learn more about selling on Amazon or how to grow businesses. And this for me is a chance to work with someone that's an 8-figure seller. In fact, he sold the business for 8 figures, and it's someone that's a lot more experienced in the Amazon space. And education to me means not only am I learning more, but I get to share that knowledge on my YouTube channel with all the students in my course. And as I go to launch new businesses, it's gonna make me just a better entrepreneur. Now, it's really hard to estimate how much that education is actually worth. But I will tell you, in the last 3 years of owning Performance Nut Butter, I learned way more than I did in 4 years in college. In fact, if you wanted to put a price tag on how much I learned in those 3 years of running Performance Nut Butter, I mean, at a minimum, you could say it was worth $300,000 because that's how much profit I earned from my business. Or you could look at how much money I've made off of YouTube over the last few years sharing information about Performance Nut Butter, and that also was probably around $300,000. Or alternatively, you could look at the number of course sales I've gotten and all the students coming in that are learning from the knowledge that I've learned from Performance Nut Butter, and that's also probably pretty close to around $300,000. So at a minimum, you could say in the last 3 years, I learned about $300,000 worth of information. So if I had to put a value on how much I'm gonna learn from working with Rob, launching new products, learning how to sell businesses, at a minimum, I'd have to say that's worth at least $150,000 because as I mentioned, if you wanna go to like a top tier university for 4 years, it's probably gonna cost you around $150,000. And I'm willing to bet you I'm gonna learn more working with Bob than most people do in 4 years out of college. The next thing to consider is that, as I said, I own 25% of the business and we're looking to sell for at least $1 to $2 million. So I'm gonna say that I honestly think that he's gonna sell it for at least $2 million, which is around $500,000 for me. Now there's a chance that he ends up selling it for more because he's a very driven person and I know that he has the potential because he sold a previous business for 10 million. I think there's a chance that he grows it and sells it for 4 or 5 million. There's also a chance that he sells it for 1 million and there's obviously a chance that for whatever reason that he sells it for nothing. Like basically the business just folds. And when I look at all the possibilities, I think selling it for $2 million on average is probably the most likely thing to happen. So that's another $500,000 in this deal that's not money exchanging hands directly right now. Another thing to think about when trying to create a partnership with someone is their network. And Bob is a very well-connected person. He knows a lot of different people, knows a lot of very successful Amazon sellers. And I think by owning a business with him, I'm gonna increase my network. And if I had to put a value on that, I'd say that I'm probably gonna get at least $100,000 of value by networking with him on future projects that we might do together. We've already talked about ideas of potentially investing in startup businesses or different Amazon seller tools, all kinds of random things. So I think we have the potential to do a lot of future business together. But on top of that, he's told me about all these really successful people that he knows that I could potentially get dinner with, potentially have on this YouTube channel. And so I'd say at a minimum, to be that closely tied with someone as successful as him, I'd pay $100,000 for, because basically these connections are gonna lead to more connections and more connections, and I have a lot of life ahead of me to make different business networking connections. And probably the last and most important part of this deal that's not just money exchanging hands, that's gonna be very powerful for me, is the content. Because he's committed to launching new products, because we're gonna eventually sell the business for $1 to $2 million, I'm gonna be able to produce a lot of really amazing content. I'm gonna be able to give you like a behind the scenes view of a lot of really cool things that he's gonna be doing and I'm gonna be doing with our Amazon business. And I could make a lot of money from that content. As I've mentioned, over the last few years, I probably made around $200,000 to $300,000 in ad revenue alone. And so if I had to put a monetary value on the content I'm gonna be able to create from working with Bob, I'd say at least another $150,000. But now here's the answer to the big question. How much did he actually pay me for 75% of the business? Now, the first thing he said is all the money that's in the bank account, which was around $170,000. He's like, that's my money. That's not part of the deal. I get to withdraw that money and put it into my bank, which is really nice because I've been keeping that money in my business bank account, not touching it because I wanted to keep it in there for any kind of cash flow issues, for launching new products. But basically that's the first thing. He let me keep the $170,000 that's in the bank. On top of that, he gave me around $66,000 in just straight payment. And the reason we settled on this amount was that's roughly the cost of around 75% of the inventory Performance Nut Butter has. Now, the other part of the deal that I haven't really mentioned yet is he agreed going forward, he's gonna fund everything. Every single expense that Performance Nut Butter has, he's gonna pay for. On top of that, he's gonna actively grow Performance Nut Butter. I don't have to do anything anymore, which I'm really excited about because then I can focus more on this YouTube channel. But at the same time, I'm still gonna be involved in Performance Nut Butter. I'm still gonna do calls with him. I'm still gonna be able to make high-level decisions, but I'm not gonna have to actually go do the grunt work. Now, I'm gonna be switching a lot of my focus to working with students that are in my course, The Passion Product Formula. And I have a playlist right here of a bunch of success stories and failure stories of people launching products on Amazon FBA. So click on that playlist. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and remember to enjoy the journey. Bye, everybody.